a body about 70 feet inside the sewer pipe.
There's got to be something around here.
Here you go. Bingo.
In the chest, I recovered medium caliber bullet.
We believe Gordo was killed elsewhere.
We don't stop working until we get a conviction.
They told them exactly what happened because I don't want to hear that bullshit.
Where were you last Sunday?
Cleveland Police Dispatch, may I help you? I'm calling to report my brother's been missing. How long has he been missing? Since Sunday afternoon. How old is your brother? 17. It's been like, what, like about 3 days now? Okay, what's his name?
Gabriel.
Gabriel, and the last name?
Feliciano.
Back in September, a young Latino male, Gabriel Feliciano, was reported missing.
Born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, Detective Tim Entenach has solved over 100 homicide cases.
Now, 10 days later, and the detectives working missing persons case just called the office and said that they discovered a deceased male found in a park. They believe he may be Gabriel, so I'm going out there now to meet my partner.
Right now, I'm en route to Brookside Park to meet up with my partner, Tim Entenach.
Detective Joselito Sandoval used to investigate felony and narcotics cases for Cleveland PD before joining the homicide unit.
Found a body, I'd say about maybe about 70 feet inside the sewer pipe.
Where that drainage ditch is, that's where he's at.
There's a set of railroad tracks off here. It's a rather isolated area back here. We're gonna go into the sewer pipe now, see where the victim's at. The officers came in the same way we did when they discovered the victim's body here in the sewer. His feet are probably about 75 feet away from the entrance of the sewer. I mean, somebody went to a lot of effort to get the body back here this far and hide it. The victim's lying on his back. Some maggot activity around his head. There's silt built up around his head and shoulders. She's wearing no shoes, and his underwear is pulled down. This could have been pulled down when he was being dragged to the sewer. Being that this is a sewer, water's still flowing through it. If there was anything around him, it probably was pushed out. I would guess he's killed up on railroad tracks, because those are right above us. Detective Sandoval's up on the railroad tracks checking for evidence.
We're up here looking for any type of evidence and possibly a blood trail. I'm just trying to narrow it down to an approximate location.
It appears there could be some blood droplets here. We have right here.
The blood on the rocks could be an important clue. The DNA may match the victim's, which could tell detectives that he was probably killed near the tracks. The blood could also lead them to a suspect.
Possible blood over here.
Here.
I think we'll have to take a sample of it. They're small enough, we could just take the rocks and send them to the coroner's office.
Now that the detectives have found possible evidence, the forensics unit will document the scene with photos and scans of the blood on the rocks before collecting them.
Detective Entenach asked us to scan the crime scene. So right now we're doing an overall of the whole area. What the Leica scanner does is it freezes the crime scene in 3D. In order to get a full picture of the crime scene, I scan the body. And in this case, I'm also scanning two areas: the sewer pipe where the body was found and the train tracks where some blood spatter was found on the rocks. The distance between where the body was and the tracks where the blood was is probably about 475 feet. Right here is the entrance to the tunnel where the body was found. We got a nice view of everything all around it. Evidence is crucial to a case. You know, some cases are won and lost alone on having and not having a certain piece of evidence. You know, we have everything memorialized right here.
Now that the area is scanned, the ambulance attempts here to take the body to the coroner's office. You guys ever have a body in a sewer pipe this before? Nope. My first one. At this point, we don't know if it's going to be a homicide or not. We're going to have to wait until the autopsy is done by the coroner's office tomorrow, and they'll be able to tell me how the person died and if they're going to rule it a homicide or not.
The coroner will also confirm the identity of the victim.
It's possible that if it's a homicide, you know, how many suspects we have? I don't know. Could there be one person involved in getting the body into the sewer tunnel? Or could there be multiple? Could there be 2 or 3 suspects? All we've got to go on right now is some blood on the rocks and a dead young man in the drain pipe.
The coroner has identified the victim as the reported missing person, 17-year-old Gabriel Feliciano, who also goes by the street name Gordo.
Today I'm going to meet Gordo's sister Carmen at her house. We're also going to meet Sergeant Rutwood from Crime Stoppers. The purpose of today is to get a Crime Stopper story out there in the hope that people will call it anonymously to the Crime Stoppers hotline and provide information on a suspect. Then that information is forwarded on to the appropriate police agency or detective. I've had a couple murders solved based on tips coming in from the Crime Stoppers hotline. How are you today?
Okay, I guess.
What's the cat's name?
Gordo. My nickname for my brother.
When he gets in here, he's going to talk to her. Just do a quick what she knows about it or what it's like now not to have her brother with her.
Okay.
He was always being real silly. He was a happy person. Everyone loved him, got along with everybody. He always was helping people. When he was gone, it's like it's a missing piece of our family, so it's been very difficult.
So what are you hoping for?
I'm hoping that justice be served. It was cruel what they did to him, how they left him there.
If somebody out there does know something, what would you say to them? What would you want them to do?
Please come forward. Come forward and help our family put closure to this. You know, please don't feel that your life would be in danger. That's why there's so many crimes out there unsolved, because people are afraid to come forward. You know, they prefer to live with this guilt of knowing that they know something.
You see the pain on her face about his death. Hopefully people start calling Crime Stoppers once they see the story. You know, either a big tip, little tip, anything. Any bit of information can help.
Gabriel Feliciano came up missing.
Found a body about 70 feet inside a sewer pipe.
While detectives search for leads to track down Gordo's killer, forensic tests are underway at the coroner's office.
Body was received yesterday. Clothing was taken off of the individual and then hung to dry so it could be examined today. Going to do a hand exam looking for hair fiber transfer, as well as examination for other trace evidence, DNA samples that may be present. His fingernails are really short. I don't think I'm going to be able to actually scrape them. We're going to collect gunshot primer residue samples.
If primer residue is discovered on the body, it could tell detectives whether Gordo was holding a weapon, and also the firing distance between him and the gun when he was shot.
Live ammunition is made up of 4 main components: the bullet, the cartridge casing, the propellant, and the primer. When a firearm is discharged, the firing pin of the weapon strikes the primer cap on the base of the cartridge casing, causing the primer components to burn. The burning primer components then ignite the propellant, which is the gunpowder. As the gunpowder burns, it propels the bullet down the barrel of the firearm. The gunshot primer residue collection device is an aluminum stub coated with a carbonized adhesive. As the collection device is applied to the surface of the skin or the material, the adhesive will pick up any gunshot primer residue present. The trace metal reagent that was applied to the victim's hands can react with metal particles that have been transferred to the hands through friction. The reaction can then be observed visually or can be observed with an ultraviolet light source. Looking for powder grains, actual gunpowder grains. Under ultraviolet light, any trace metal reaction will appear a dark purple color. On its own, the trace metal reagent will fluoresce a yellow-green color. The goal of the trace metal detection test is to obtain a pattern reaction that can then be compared to an object that created it, such as the handle of a gun or a knife.
The trace evidence exam of Gabriel's body does not produce any gunpowder residue and rules out the possibility that he was holding a gun. So now, the detectives hope the autopsy will yield some results.
I'm going to meet with Dr. Philo, who did the victim's autopsy. I'm going to learn what the results are of the autopsy, his injuries, and the manner of death. Hello, doctor.
Hi, Detective.
How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Okay. Could you tell how long he's been dead?
I would estimate initially 4 to 5 days, but there'll have to be some further testing before I can be more accurate.
These are the x-rays of our victim?
Yes, they are. There are 2 gunshot wounds with bullets recovered. One is in the head and the other one is in the chest. This bullet going through the back entered just left of his spine at the approximate level of the bottom of the shoulder blades. The gunshot wound of the back went from back to front and slightly upwards. As it went through the spine, it hit the bone and it started to fragment. Portions of the bullet then went through the right lung, through and into the heart itself. The gunshot wound on his head, as it's going through the skull, it then fragments, and so once it gets through the bone, it rips and it does massive damage to the brain tissue itself. And that's the bullet that's visible here in the x-ray.
I recovered a partially jacketed, medium caliber bullet.
He was essentially dead or on the dying process from the gunshot wound to the back.
Could you tell how he was positioned? Could he be standing up, running away, kneeling down?
Where the bullets entered the back of him, the gun was behind him. The bullets go upwards, so he may have been leaning forward.
Any other injuries?
He had some superficial injuries on the top of his head. Actually, what they were is that they were parts of the skin that had maggot activity. We collected a sample of them and then send them to our entomologist.
Thank you very much, doctor. I'll call if any more questions.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
All right, you too now.
The 2 medium caliber bullets that Dr. Philo recovered from the victim's body are significant finds. Now, the hunt is on for a murder weapon.
Bringing in the victim's girlfriend, Lillian, for an interview. Hopefully she'll tell me something that could possibly turn into a lead. How long were you and Gordo going out?
A year and 3 months.
How's your relationship with Gordo?
Oh, we were close. He told me everything. There was this guy, him and I used to be friends. He's like, Milo wants to go down to the tracks to show me something. He used to tell me, if anything ever happened, don't ever go down there because Milo be robbing people down there. He's like, I love you, I'll be back. He's like, well, go see your grandma and I will be here in 15 minutes. I'm gonna call you, you better answer your phone. I don't get no phone calls.
So he would have called you Sunday?
Yeah, he would have called the same day.
What time do you think this was when they walked off together?
10:37 a.m.
Now, this is the last time you saw Gordo?
Yeah.
Did you ever see Milo with a gun?
Yeah.
What kind of gun did he have?
I don't know. Do you have pictures?
There's some up there.
Milo had a revolver, a .380 maybe, and he also had a Glock .380.
So what did you find out from Gordo's girlfriend?
Well, Lillian gave me a lead about some guy known in the streets as Milo. She said that Milo was hanging out with Gordo. She saw them on Sunday talking about going down to the tracks and saw them leaving together.
Right.
You know, this is 3 days before his mom calls report Gordo missing.
Now, we obviously got to track down this Milo and see what he knows. Detective Antonak and I have been talking about not finding any evidence initially on the scene. And now that we have some leads on a medium caliber bullet and also a possible .380 caliber handgun used, we'd really like to go back to the scene and search further for evidence that we might have missed.
Detectives decide to return to the crime scene to expand their search to a wider area.
We're not finding anything down here that looks like any weapons or any other type of evidence. Maybe there's something up by the train tracks. I'm looking for spatter maybe on the wall, but I don't see really any, nothing sticks out. Oh, here you go. Bingo. Right here. Blood, good cooling in here. Male Gabriel Feliciano came up missing.
The officers discovered the victim's body here in the sewer. Did you ever see Milo with a gun?
Milo had a revolver, a .380 maybe.
Oh, here you go. Bingo. Right here. Blood. Shoe marks.
That's why I was like coming back out to these things. You know, you always see more stuff the next day.
That's a lot of blood. The shoe print could point us to a suspect. It could tell us what kind of shoe it's from, the size of the foot, or even the weight of the suspect. What we'll do is we'll just measure it out and take samples. We'll send them to the coroner's office. They'll test the blood that we find here and test it with the samples they take from the victim during the post-mortem exam. As long as we document what we find, it's good.
Although detectives did not find a gun, the blood and shoe print they discovered could provide leads. They'll send all of this evidence to the lab for testing.
All right, let's go over some theories about the body found in the sewer pipe. What have you guys got so far?
We've identified the victim through his fingerprints as Gabriel Feliciano, who was also known by the nickname of Gordo on the streets.
Okay.
When I saw the body in the sewer tunnel, we measured about 75 feet inside of it. So based on the time that the missing persons report came in, probably been about a week.
Okay.
We found the victim. He was lying in the pipe, face up. There was maggot activity and silt all around his face and his body. We didn't find any small evidence around the body. There was water flowing out of the pipe all the way around him. So we're assuming if there was something small, like a shell casing or anything, it might have been washed away with the water.
When we found him, his underwear was down around his ankles, a possible indication that he was actually dragged from his upper body. Yeah, we believe Gordo was killed elsewhere. Us returning to the crime scene to search for further evidence and finding that blood on the north side of the tracks was a huge find.
Okay.
We're pretty sure that the blood samples that were taken from the scene will come back to Gordo. If the DNA matches that of Gordo's, it confirms our theory that he was actually shot on the train tracks and then carried or dragged to the pipe where he was hidden. If the DNA comes up as someone else, then that could be the suspect's DNA. There could have been multiple people involved in the murder.
So it looks like a second visit to the crime scene was really worth the effort.
Right.
I talked to Gordo's girlfriend, Lillian. She told me that Gordo and Milo used to hang around together. She also said that she saw Gordo and Milo together on the Sunday before he was reported missing. They were talking about going down to the railroad tracks. She sees them leave together. What we need is to catch like a break. You know, if we can talk to someone, they could tell something, you know, that way it would help us go after Milo.
Detective Antonok gets a big break. An anonymous eyewitness has come forward claiming to have crucial evidence about their suspect, Milo.
Can I talk to you? Sure. Well, it turns out that the witness knows Milo, and he told me that he witnessed Gordo being forced into a car with Milo on the Sunday before he disappeared. He also told me that Milo was bragging about killing Gordo down by the tracks. I believe he's telling the truth, but he's really scared to come forward and refuse to testify. Our next step now is to find this Milo and question him. Pablo, 10 Minutes on Homicide, how you doing today? Call about Ishmael Irizarry, a.k.a. Milo. Hey, I talked to some guy today. He's getting first-hand information coming from Milo that Milo said he shot Gordo, dragged him to the tunnel, and this happened because Gordo was snitching on him.
While the DA's office reviews the evidence before issuing an arrest warrant for the suspect Milo, detectives learn that Milo has just been arrested on unrelated charges.
I was the detective assigned to Gabriel Feliciano's missing person case. Today, officers from the 2nd District arrested a male that goes by the name of Milo. We suspect that he may be involved in Gabriel's murder.
This interview with this juvenile male would be big if he were willing to talk. I'm Detective Sandoval. This is Detective Antonok. We're from the Cleveland Homicide Unit, okay? And it appears that because this involves a dead body and it appears violence was involved, that's why we're handling it, okay?
You got anything to say, you got anything, I don't care what it is. You don't play around.
Well, listen, your parents love you, okay? Someone loved him too, so just think about that. Because you know what? Every mother deserves to have some peace.
So what you gonna do? You're gonna talk to them and you're gonna tell them exactly what happened? Milo, look at me. You're gonna talk to them and you're gonna say anything that happened, right? Look at me, because I don't want to hear that bullshit. If not, I'll sign paper right now, and they take over you.
Found a body about 70 feet inside the sewer pipe.
That's a lot of blood. We'll test the blood that we find here with the samples they take from the victim.
Today, the officers arrested a male that goes by the name Milo.
You're going to talk to them, and you're going to tell them exactly what happened.
What's going on right now is this kid Milo is too scared. So we have a couple of detectives from the 2nd District Detective Bureau in there trying to get him to talk.
What was the kid was called? I was there, Martinez. Tell him what he said. So now he's going to do a little bit more. Now he's admitting to moving the body. Okay. First he denied everything. Then he admitted to being there. He says he wanted to take a look at it. And I said, there's no way you could have went and take a look at this body. There's no way you just found it. So then he admitted to moving the body.
Did he say who the shooter was?
He's saying at this guy's house.
Okay. He said what kind of weapon was used maybe in this?
He says, well, I seen the gun. So.
Okay. Of course he was putting everything on somebody else. But what's important is he did put himself seeing this dead body.
Although Milo is saying that a local thug with the street name House shot Gabriel, detectives still consider Milo their primary suspect.
What do you want to do in this case? I don't know. What do you mean? Well, tampering evidence. Yeah, and obstructing justice.
Yeah. What we're going to do right now is we're going to have Milo booked for tampering with evidence and obstructing justice. This way, he'll be housed at juvenile court, the detention home. Our investigation will continue to try to get
House identified, because he said you know his house.
That'd be cool. Put just the name House in the computer, came up with 2 names. He's indicating it's probably a black male.
After investigating the person of interest called House, detectives rule him out as a suspect.
We're here today at the Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office in the DNA lab. We're looking at samples for the Gabriel Feliciano case and items that were submitted to us from the police agency, which are from the scene, a dirt sample containing suspected blood, as well as suspected blood swabs from a rock from the scene. Basically, our goal is to obtain a DNA profile from each of these items, and then to compare that profile to the victim in the case to see what matches. The very first thing we're going to be working with is the dirt sample that contains suspected blood from the scene.
What we do is we do the presumptive test for the blood, which is heme stick. From there, we will go for the DNA.
That is a positive, preliminary positive. Just going to put a few pieces in the tube.
The DNA extractions involve numerous complex steps. In the first step, the blood sample is soaked in solution containing chemicals and protein hydrolyzing enzymes, which releases the DNA into the solution. The next several steps involve purifying the DNA by removing proteins and other impurities.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and place the sample into the centrifuge. We've spun our samples, and here we have our 3 layers. The top layer you can see is a clear layer. That's what we call the aqueous layer that contains our DNA. So what we're going to do with that is remove as much of it as we can without disturbing the second and third layers at all. So I'm going to be careful to not disturb the layers. Out of all the material that we started with, this is our final product. This is a liquid suspension with our DNA in it, and we're going to use that in the further processes to obtain a DNA profile. It'll take approximately a week, and once we have some results, we can go ahead and communicate those to the detectives in the case.
I'm en route to the Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office to confer with Dr. Butt. From what I understand, there are some results that are in on some of the items that were submitted to the Coroner's Office for testing. Hey, Doc.
Yeah,
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm here to see, I heard we have some results on Gabriel Feliciano case.
Oh, ready? Sure. So we have got the DNA results. As you see here, we did the DNA analysis from this sample of the dirt, which was in fact blood, which came back as Feliciano, Gabriel Feliciano.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you very much. That's excellent news.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Sure, welcome.
This means that our theory about him being killed up on the railroad tracks is true, that he was actually shot up on the track area and that he was carried or dragged to the sewer pipe where we had found him.
Based on the new DNA evidence, combined with Milo's own statement that he helped move Gordo's body after his death, detectives secure a warrant to search Milo's home.
Okay, right now I'm heading to Milo's house. We're going to execute a search warrant at his house. I'm going to meet my partner, Detective Sandoval, on scene. My gut tells me that Milo isn't telling the truth about shooting Gordo. So we're going to look for additional evidence, such as a murder weapon. Right now we don't have much visual evidence to go on. I'm Detective Entenach. We have a search warrant. We have to search the house for some things. So if you just let us know where Milo's room is at.
He supposedly burned his clothes back here somewhere. I checked that fire thing for any type of clothing residue. So we'll just take a look at everything and see what we can't find. It's hard to be too optimistic on these things.
So far, search has turned up nothing. I'm disappointed we didn't find anything, some more evidence. I was hoping we would have found the gun. We'll just keep on working the case. We don't stop working until we get a conviction.
Without any physical evidence to charge Milo, detectives request an entomological exam on the maggots found on Gordon's body. The test will confirm the victim's time of death and when his body was moved.
What we have here are the living maggots. They provide for us a snapshot in time as to the data that are available to determine time of death. This is data. This is crime scene data right here. The maggots recovered from Gabriel's body will now be examined to determine the time of death. These maggots would eventually grow into blowflies, which will lay eggs on a body or a carcass just a few minutes or a few hours following death.
This test involves two main parts. First, the oldest adult maggots are preserved in an alcohol solution. Then their age is determined by counting the number of spiracles around their heads. The oldest maggots serve as the control group.
Because it has 3 slits, I know it's a mature maggot. In this particular situation, you see maggots of 2 different sizes here off of the victim.
The maggot larvae found on the body are grown to the adult stage in order to identify their species.
Since there are 6 common species of blowflies in northeastern Ohio, all with different growth rates, I have to determine whether or not the maggots are all from the same species. If they're all the same species, I can rule out any other possible time of death. If I can figure out how old the larvae are, I can use that information to determine time of death. So I'm going to take the maggot and I'm going to give him a food source. All we end up doing is placing them on the raw beef. Oh, they're happy as clams right now. They're eating machines. We provide them some sawdust or other material on the bottom of these dishes. Now all I want to do here is to allow them to complete their life cycle. When they're fully mature, they're going to crawl off, they're going to head down into that dry substrate and form the pupa. The pupa is this resting stage. It looks like a little brown seed. In about 5 days, they'll form an adult. With that adult, we can identify our maggots with relative ease, apply our biological information to the case, and then come up with a determination of an estimated time of death.
Detectives hope that Dr. Kuiper was able to verify the time of Gordo's death, but more importantly, they want to learn when Gordo's body was transferred to the pipe in order to confirm or refute Milo's claim that he helped to move the victim days after he was killed.
I happen to have some specimens here that pertain to your homicide case. Based upon some of the anatomy that I've looked at, I'm able to tell how old the maggots are, therefore when the body was first killed.
So he's last seen alive on September 23rd, discovered October 3rd. So that's roughly 10 days. So we're within that time frame based on what you see with the maggots.
Yeah, that my minimum falls between the time that the victim was last seen and when the body was discovered, closer to the time, of course, when the body was discovered.
Do you have an idea, based on your data, maybe about how long after his death he was actually placed into that tunnel?
I would suspect within maybe a couple hours at most.
It kind of blows Milo's little reasoning that he stumbled across the body sometime after he was murdered.
Correct. All right, Doctor, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Even though Dr. Kuiper couldn't pinpoint Gordo's exact date of death, he did help us poke big holes in Milo's story about Milo moving the body several days after Gordo was reported killed. So we're gonna go back in there, continue our interview with Milo.
We brought him downtown to our office, and when we read him his rights, he opted to have an attorney present.
We let his stepfather talk to him. Stepfather convinced him to come in and give us a full statement.
And we just want to find out what happened, you know.
It was a party.
It was a party? Yeah. So what happened at the party? You said you were about to say a black car pulled up?
The car pulled up or whatever, and the dude who was in the front seat, they jumped out, pointed the gun at him, grabbed him, put him in the car, and drove off.
Milo's saying that he's at a party and Gordo was basically kidnapped at gunpoint by a bunch of gang members. I'm not sure I believe him.
Who else saw Gordo get forced in that car?
A couple dudes.
How about the dudes? You know any names? None of them.
I have a question for you. The party was on a Saturday.
Yeah.
His mother reported him missing on a Sunday. So how did he get home that day? That evening? I mean, after the party, at some point he had to come home. Did you see him on Sunday?
No.
Anywhere?
I didn't see him at all. After Saturday, I didn't see him at all.
Where were you Sunday?
Today, the office arrested a male that goes by the name Milo. We suspect that he may be involved in Gabriel's murder.
Do you have an idea how long after his death he was actually placed into that tunnel?
I would suspect within maybe a couple hours at most.
We have got the DNA results from this sample of the dirt, which came back as Gabriel Feliciano.
The party was on a Saturday.
Yeah.
His mother reported him missing on a Sunday. Did you see him on Sunday?
No.
Where were you Sunday? We have people that said they saw you at least walking with Gordo the next day.
I didn't see Gordo on Sunday at all. You shoot him? No.
Every time they talk to him, he's adding more information.
Was he killed that night or what? I don't know. They just told me on Tuesday that train tracks, that's where they put him over there. I was just going to see it, to see if it was true or not. Okay.
Were you down there when this happened to Gordo?
Nah, not at that time.
Are you sure?
I just went when he wanted me to help him move the body. That's when that,
What?
Say that again? I'm getting confused, I don't know.
There's nothing to be confused about. I just asked
saying,
you.
Like, my mind's just going.
Were you there when they did this to Gordo? That's pretty
And
simple.
then you said something else, right?
No.
Oh.
You pretty tight with Gordo?
I used to, until we got into the problem that we're having in the court right now.
What Milo's talking about now is a burglary that him and the victim were both charged with. They were both trying to swing a deal with the prosecutor's office. Sounds like they had a falling out over that. This could be Milo's motive.
So everything you told us so far is the truth?
He's definitely not being totally truthful, you know? That party the night before, he's saying he was kidnapped. Odds are, if that's the case, it would have been Sunday when he might have been with them.
Well, let's go over all your evidence then.
When we returned to the crime scene, we found a pool of blood up by the railroad tracks. The DNA came back as that of Gordo, so that does support our theory.
Gordo was killed somewhere else and then brought back to the pipe to be hidden.
Yeah, according to the autopsy report, he was hit with 2 shots. Once in the upper back, which traveled through to his chest. The other through the back of his head, which traveled through his brain. All with the same medium caliber. The statements we do have from Gordo's girlfriend Lillian and an anonymous witness who was too scared to come forward both point to Milo as the killer.
The entomological exam of the maggots that were found in Gordo's body show that he was moved almost immediately after he was murdered. That contradicts what Milo told us in that he returned to the scene a few days after the murder and helped move his body. And during his interrogation, Milo was kind of stammering and was trying to, it seemed like he was trying to keep his original story straight.
So where does that leave us?
Well, I talked to the juvenile court prosecutors, and they determined that we had enough to charge Milo with aggravated murder based on the eyewitness statements.
Can we bump that up?
Well, the prosecutor's going to try to get his case bound over to adult court so he can, serve adult time. There'll be a hearing to determine that.
Okay, let's try and make that happen.
The state would like to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I believe the evidence is going to establish that there is probable cause to believe that Ismail Irizarry, otherwise known on the street as Milo, that he did in fact cause the death of Gabriel Feliciano.
State your first witness.
State calls Detective Sandoval.
Based on what you know about the case, did Gabriel Feliciano disappear that Saturday night?
No, he did not.
What the juvenile was telling you, was that consistent with what you need the investigation to be?
No, it was not.
All right, Cross. Were you able to find any evidence at the sewer that the body had been moved into the sewer? Dragged?
Yes.
Yeah, what evidence did you find of that?
The blood on the tracks, plus his statements.
All right, well, we'll get to that later.
Well, that's part of it.
United States calls Detective Antoinette. Did there come a time when you spoke to anyone else in that neighborhood who had learned from Milo what had happened to Gabriel Feliciano?
Yes.
And who was that? And what did he tell you?
He told me that on September 24th of 2007, which is the Monday after Gordo was last seen alive, that Milo was bragging about shooting Gordo and putting his body into a sewer tunnel. He also mentioned that Milo was afraid he left evidence behind and went and stripped Gordo's body, and that the reason he shot him is because Gordo was snitching on Milo.
Lillian Rodriguez? I'm going to take your attention back to September of 2007. Were you and Gabriel together then?
Yes.
And specifically, I'm going to take you to September 22nd. That was a Saturday. Do you recall that day?
Yes.
Did you see Gordo that day?
Mm-hmm.
Did Gordo go to any parties that night?
No.
What did you guys do?
He stayed home.
And now I'm going to turn your attention to September 23rd of 2007, that Sunday morning. Did you see Gordo that day?
Yeah.
What were you doing that morning?
We went down the street to his friend's house, and then Milo showed up. Gordo had pulled me to the side and told me he wants to go somewhere, the same place they wanted to go the night before, which was the train tracks.
Does there come a time when Gordo does, in fact, leave you on that Sunday morning and go with Milo?
Yeah.
Did you ever see Gordo again after that?
No.
Did you hear from him at all after that?
No.
All right, defense. I'm moving that the state did not show probable cause and for the dismissal of the case. There is nothing directly tying Feliciano's death to Ismael Irizarry, and so I don't believe that the state has shown probable cause.
Okay. State?
Your Honor, September 22nd, Ismael Irizarry wants everyone to believe that Gabriel Feliciano was abducted. He wasn't. He was at home with his girlfriend. On September 23rd, he conveniently doesn't tell the police that he is with the victim. He lures the victim to their park. He is the last person to be seen with the victim when the victim is alive. He knows where the body is. He's able to give a description where the body is. Your Honor, I believe there is probable cause to believe that he did, in fact, commit this murder. Thank you.
All right, based on testimony here today, court finds that there is probable cause here. So because the court did find probable cause, the court at this time will automatically bind the alleged delinquent over to the adult court where he will be tried as if he were an adult in this case.
With this ruling, Milo will stand trial as an adult for aggravated murder.
In our eyes, it is a victory, and we do feel good about it. And we know that we're doing the best we can, in just like all the other cases, to put them together where we can get successful prosecution.
On a body about 70 feet inside a sewer pipe.
There's got to be something around here.
Here you go. Bingo.
In the chest, I recovered a medium caliber bullet.
We believe Gordo was killed elsewhere.
We don't stop working until we get a conviction.
I'm gonna tell them exactly what happened, because I don't want to hear that bullshit.
Where were you last Sunday?